Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to those of you joining us on the West Coast, and I guess good evening for those of you joining us from across the pond. My name is Robert Puentes. I'm the president and CEO of the ENO Center for Transportation. I want to welcome you to this virtual event, Saving Time and Making Sense, a blueprint for building transit better. This is ENO's Transit Cost and Project Delivery Symposium. I'm really, really excited for these next couple of days. I think I got the count right. It looks like we have over 40 speakers from around the country and around the world, actually. We have 15 just really stellar sessions. I'm really looking forward to it. For the last 18 months or so, the ENO staff has produced really excellent events in this virtual format. Of course, with all of the great content that you've come to expect from ENO, but also with plenty of opportunities for networking and interaction between you all as participants. I'm really thrilled for what the ENO team has been able to pull together and really very excited that you all got to experience it over these next couple of days. Next slide, please. So just for those of you who don't know, just a very quick commercial about who we are at ENO. ENO is not an acronym. It's named after a person. It's William Phelps Eno, and that is not his mugshot. That is actually his honorary driver's license that he received from the city of Paris when he developed the first traffic codes for that city. He also did the same thing in New York and in London, a couple of other places. He established this organization 100 years ago. This is ENO centenary this year. We've had lots of different activities and events throughout the year. I hope you've been able to see those and take advantage of them. We have an essay contest that we're going to be doing later this year, so pay attention to that. But today we are the only think tank, the only public policy organization in the country, maybe around the world, that is focused exclusively on transportation and on all modes of transportation. This is obviously a transit-specific event, but we do everything from aviation to electric scooters and everything in between. We are based here in Washington, D.C., but we do a lot of work with cities, states, metropolitan areas across the country, and we do it all with the public and the private and the nonprofit sectors. We obviously don't do all of that at the same time. We're a lean, mean team here in Washington, but we do try to work on areas where we can have the most relevant, timely, and impactful work, and more on the impact in just a second. And this work and this symposium really couldn't be more timely and more impactful. Of course, the very important infrastructure bill that's winding its way through Congress right now contains billions of dollars for transit capital investments. I think it's just $8 billion even in fixed guideway grants alone. At the same time, though, we are living through a period where transit continues to be hammered by the global pandemic, decreased ridership on one side and increased costs to deal with the virus on the other. But we've also seen very, very clearly that transit matters more than ever, not just providing a lifeline for essential workers and those who are transit dependent, but also showing that the transportation workforce is an essential part of the essential workforce across the country. So this moment dictates that it's more imperative than ever that we get the very most out of our transit investments. We need to make sure that they're delivered on time and on budget, and we need to make sure that they don't cost so much and take so long to begin with at the beginning. Next slide, please. So that's what we intended to find out with this project. There's a narrative that projects cost more in the United States. We wanted to find out, is it actually true? Do public transit projects cost more in the United States? And do they take longer to build? And if so, why? And then what can we do about it? And I'll tell you, we've had overwhelming support that this is important and timely work. Very prominent discussion in many, many cities around this country and in peer countries around the world. And as you'll hear throughout the symposium, there's a healthy amount of complementary research and analysis going along with the work that we've done here at ENO, but universities and other associations and advocacy organizations around the country. But, we've also gotten some feedback. Some people acknowledge that transit projects can be expensive and get attention for their overruns and their costs, but ultimately, they're valuable and worthwhile projects, not just from a transportation perspective, from an environmental, social, and economic one as well. Others, quite frankly, deny that there is a problem, or if there is a problem, it's across the infrastructure space. So why are we just picking on public transit, with this work? And I'll tell you, we get it. We hear it loud and clear, but we believe very strongly that if we're going to make a dent on climate, if we're going to deal with things like traffic congestion, if we're going to make sure that people have access to jobs and opportunity, we're going to need more transit and we're going to need better transit. And we're not going to get more if we can't figure out how to do them in a timely and cost-effective way. And that's why we're here and really what this project is all about. As I mentioned, his work is already having a significant impact. In Austin, Texas, they recently approved a resolution to identify elements in their code and permitting procedures that are impediments to timely delivery of their big transit build out they have going on there. The ENO work is formally cited in that resolution. The Board of Sound Transit in Seattle recently approved a resolution to bring in outside specialists, including international perspectives, to provide experience to that agency. Again, one of our key recommendations. We know that Los Angeles Metro is taking a close look at our recommendations to segment some of the contracts. You'll hear a lot about these throughout the next couple of days. And we're doing a lot of work with other agencies on advising them with some of the discrete findings and recommendations. So all that impact and all that relevance is certainly going to continue. Next slide, please. Let me just take a very quick second to thank the Merck Family Fund and Transit Center for leading the support for the first major phase of this work that we're talking about today. Also, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the Barr Foundation, John Merck Fund for their generous support. The Federal Transit Administration is supporting the next tranche of research for this initiative and also for their support of this symposium. These supporters are not just financial partners to us, but intellectual ones as well. And we're really grateful for their partnership and their participation with us on all this. Next slide, please. I also want to recognize the outstanding advisory group that we pulled together for this. The ENO team has met and spoken with literally dozens and dozens of people all around the world as part of this project. But the folks on this screen lent their expertise, both in terms of the substantive content of this initiative, but also the process and then how the project evolved over the last few months. This is really complicated stuff. We saw that as soon as we got into it, and we relied heavily on their advice and their expertise, both individually and collectively as the part of the advisors. Many of these folks I think you're going to hear from actually throughout the symposium. So I'd like to now introduce the last alphabetical name on that list. Charlie Zelle agreed to chair this advisory panel back in 2019 when he was chairman of the Jefferson Bus Lines. He is now the chairman of the Metropolitan Council in the Twin Cities, and before that was commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation from 2013 to 2019. He has really been a just tremendous partner to ENO on all of this. He lives and breathes this stuff, and so nobody better to introduce our keynote speaker. Let me turn it over to Charlie Zelle.
Thank you, Rob, and hello, everyone. It has really been my great honor to chair this advisory panel for this important ENO project. I've had over 30 years managing a private sector intercity bus line, Jefferson lines that run through the heartland. And I certainly learned that efficiency on capital-intensive business is very critical. But I also realized transportation, as we all know, is a multi-sector enterprise. I knew that in the private sector, and I certainly know that sitting in the public sector. When I was a commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation, I engaged in some conversations about these large infrastructure projects. Then it was highway bridge projects, but some of the same issues are there. And I talked to some of the early funders about this idea, and to think about having then, that was years ago, to have this ripen to a full engagement of the ENO Foundation is incredibly gratifying and incredibly important and effective. I can't think of a better institution to help kind of lead this thought analysis. As Rob was pointing out, large infrastructure projects really matter. And here we are on the cusp of perhaps even more infrastructure dollars. How do we deploy them in the most effective way? And certainly this is not just a US issue, although we're talking about comparing global costs. It is a global issue, but it's one that's not just theoretical. In that time, between when I was chair of the Department of Transportation and now as chair of Metropolitan Council, where we are actually not just doing transportation planning, but we operate Metro Transit in the Twin Cities area. This is not an academic exercise. This is very practical. And as Rob pointed out, a number of cases, and I certainly will say that it's true in Minnesota, we will actually deploy some of this thinking, whether it's some of the permitting policy, some of the governance structures, big issues, small issues, they all add up at an important time. So just a bit about this advisory panel. I can't think of a better group, cross-sector, from academia, industry, certainly nonprofit and all levels of government, with great thinkers brought to bear. Rob showed their names. I won't list them, but it was amazing their level of engagement throughout this 2-year process. We had a kickoff meeting actually in person. Remember when we did that? In person in December of 2019, we met in Washington all day and helped kick off and set the tone for what was really been this thorough examination, ending up with the flagship report that just came out in July of this year. But it's really important to state that this is not the ending with the report that has all the answers. This is really a start of an investigative and collaborative investigation. We're just getting started. And I think this symposium is really kind of an important kind of step along what will be, again, a continuing process. But I can think of no better way to have these 4 days to have experts to come together, because we learn from each other and we learn from real world experience. This kind of exchange of ideas, best practices, advice from both experts, peers, this has been kind of the magic sauce in this 2-year process. So we'll begin to advance some of this during this next few days as we kind of hear from each other. As Rob pointed out, boy, it couldn't be a more timely topic with the infrastructure funding on the horizon, the need and the recognized need of what a difference it makes for our economy, as well as when you think about beyond just the economy, the idea of actually building the cities of the country where we provide access for employment. We provide access to marginalized communities to their lives. This has been proven during COVID. I've had people say, what's the need for transit? Well, we've now confirmed it's more important than ever. When we think about transit across the country, it comes in this interconnected set of lines and modes. The large transit projects think of as the spines or the backbones of something else that comes and connects to it. And that's part of its efficiency, and that's part of what makes it so important. A transit project, when it's delivered well, is incredibly expensive. And obviously there's issues that make it even more expensive, but always there's a very high return on investment. I'll speak as a private sector person. The ROI on transit investments is off the charts. And we need to recognize that and think of this almost with the lens, not just of efficiency, but of how do we be prudent and smart to get the best bang for our buck. And it couldn't have come even better to know that we have an FTA administrator who was actually on this advisory panel, Nuria Fernandez, who's going to join us today to kick off the event. She was confirmed by the U.S. Senate as the 15th administrator of the Federal Transit Administrator just this last June. And prior to her appointment, she served as general manager and CEO of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, where she was responsible for 2,100 employees and oversaw projects and programs that serve nearly 2 million people who live and work in Silicon Valley. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, and certainly a great authority, both from policy and from practical operations, our FTA Administrator, Nuria Fernandez. Welcome, Nuria.
Thank you so much, Charlie. So great to see you. And good afternoon to everyone. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast, and good evening to those of you overseas. On behalf of Secretary Pete Buttigieg and the Biden-Harris administration, I really appreciate this opportunity to address this group today. So this week's symposium is going to focus on best practices for delivering transit capital projects in the United States. It's a very important issue, as Charlie mentioned, and our industry is always clamoring for new ideas and better practices based on lessons learned. And that's one of the reasons that FTA partnered with the Eno Center and provided funding for the transit cost and project delivery study. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Seattle and had a chance to observe the construction of the Linwood Station. massive. And Sound Transit, they after opened up the extension that adds 3 stations and 4 miles to its link light rail system running above, below ground. The North Gate extension offers a welcome alternative to driving in North Seattle. And that's what these projects do. They do offer that alternative. The project cost was $1.9 billion, was supported by USDOT with grants and a TIFIA loan that totaled $765 million. And Sound Transit opened North Gate on time and more than $52 million below budget. So, of course, the bottom line is not only that it's part of the project that's worth mentioning. These new Seattle stations are going to create a golden opportunity for sustainability, transit-oriented growth, and reduce congestion. At the Northgate Station, a partnership between King County and the City of Seattle is going to add 232 affordable housing units and a child learning center next to the light rail station. Moreover, Seattle's new hockey team, the Kraken, has built its headquarters and team training facility near the Northgate Station. So with a community iceplex that's going to offer youth hockey leagues and public skating lessons, they expect to attract 800,000 visitors a year, all of them taking light rail. So you'll see them with the youngsters with their hockey sticks and their skates in tow. That is a strategic transit-oriented development and a double win for Seattle. The benefits of the Link light rail system are manifold. I started with this example just to demonstrate that the costs of a project are often balanced by the ability to achieve quality of life goals. For Sound Transit and other agencies worldwide, of course, FTA looks to how they can generate economic development and provide transit-oriented development, because these are important considerations as we work on large capital transit projects. ENO's recently released report, Saving Time and Making Sense, a blueprint for building transit better, delves into the cost and timeliness in the delivery of transit projects, and the report's findings provide us with much food for thought. FTA shares ENO's interest in finding opportunities that we can deliver transit projects that are good, delivered on schedule, and that minimize costs. And certainly, there are factors that differentiate a subway extension being built in Midtown Manhattan from a new transit line under construction in Copenhagen. But we can learn from a range of approaches for project delivery. We need to consider at all levels, from transit agencies to state and local governments, as well as the federal government, how we might improve our governance processes and standards for undertaking and delivering large mega projects. I would also like to offer some of the lessons that the Federal Transit Administration has learned through its oversight of major capital projects. First, an important way to control project costs is having the right staff to design and manage them. And that speaks to the governance, starting with the board of directors, followed by the people who have been entrusted with the technical and the financial responsibility for the project. Our internal review of management capacity and capability, what we call our technical capacity, is truly a cornerstone of FTA's oversight of major projects. In addition, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to project delivery methods or construction and contract selection. FTA provides oversight over major capital project delivery, and we also provide extensive support, regularly convening stakeholders and sharing best practices on project delivery methods. Of course, many elements behind costs are project-specific. For example, utility relocation work in some cases is covered by the utility companies, but in others, these costs are borne by the transit agency. And we all know, those of us who have built mega projects know that utility relocation can make or break a project, not only in cost, but in affecting the schedule. Expenses associated with third-party agreements, such as railroad right-of-way sharing agreements, can also be significant. And as hard as transit agencies try to have an ironclad agreement with railroads, we know that sometimes that changes in the middle of the game. Construction costs must also be considered in a broader context of our shared values, such as environmental considerations, labor protections, and equity that are equally or more important. It's worth noting that for each major capital project funded by FTA, we work with the sponsor to identify these factors and to document the project outcomes with a before and after study, providing lessons learned for all of us dedicated to sound project delivery. Finally, it's important to note that the industry's performance related to project cost management has continued to improve over time. The most recent FTA predicted versus actual study, which compiles and reviews the predicted versus actual costs for multiple capital investment grant projects, found that about 85% of FTA major capital projects were completed within approximately 10% of the baseline of the project cost. So this reinforces the work that FTA and the transit industry have done so to more accurately estimate and also to plan for transit project costs in the US, understanding what the risks are and what the cost of that risk that needs to be integrated into the discussion. So I want to thank Rob and his team at ENO for drafting this report. It is important for all of us to consider these recommendations, and we should continue to work together because our mutual goal really is to deliver all transit projects more effectively and efficiently. We can look forward to a lively discussion about the report's conclusions and recommendations. After all, we're all in the business of improving access and mobility for thousands of people who use transit every day, and we want to deliver all of our projects responsibly. I also want to take a moment to provide a brief update on the administration's Build Back Better goals. As you know, this is truly an important time for our nation's public transportation systems as they're still grappling with the effect of the pandemic. Congress is working to pass the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and we're optimistic that we will see a legislation soon. The legislation, which is $550 billion in new federal investment in America's infrastructure, includes about $90 billion for the transit industry. And that is, as many of you know who have been following this, by far the most significant federal investment in public transportation in our nation's history. And we want to make sure that those funds are used in an effective and efficient way because those funds are going to allow us to rebuild, they're going to allow us to build new, and they're going to allow us to start to take down the ever-growing pipeline of state of good repair projects in our capital investment programs. This bill includes significant guaranteed funding for FTA's Capital Investment Grant Program, which will help build projects that expand mobility, improve local economies, and also promote equity in both transportation and housing, helping advance the Biden-Harris administration's equity and economic strength goals. We can also address something that's very important to all of us, and that is to achieving the climate goals, ensuring the use of green construction practices that help to reduce the rising levels of greenhouse emissions. And we're looking forward to providing new sources of funding to help transit agencies help combat climate change and also to expand their reach to serve more people, especially those who have been traditionally left behind. The IIJA will also help accelerate projects that may be slowed by unreliable funding. So considering the topic of this symposium, I'm sure this additional funding will be welcome to help advance projects and hire the right staff to get the projects done on time and on budget. Finally, throughout July and August, FTA held a series of listening sessions with transit leaders, labor union leaders, and national public transportation associations. And what we learned was that transit agencies are doing a great lot of things to reach their customers as the pandemic is forcing them to rethink the service that they provide. The pandemic is also forcing all of us to rethink who our riders are and how we serve them in the rural areas as much as in our larger urban areas. As in any business, that we need to understand our customers, and the better we understand them, the better we can serve them. We're seeing agencies undertaking creative marketing campaigns to build back that customer confidence, introducing free fares in some instances, providing more on-demand options for new destinations and others, and undertake planning activities to understand and adapt to the new customer level patterns. So even as we take on major projects, we need to build the transit infrastructure of the future. we will need to make sure that these systems are positioned so that we can deliver the benefits, not only that the projects are going to bring, but that can also ensure that we're building on time and within budget. This past few weeks, FTA has made funding available under pandemic-related programs to transit agencies of all sizes so that they can take on these types of activities. An extensive transit network really creates a better connection, but those opportunities should be truly available to everyone. And we want to make sure that regardless of how people travel, everyone has an equal chance at getting where they need to go when they need to get there. So thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the symposium and that the discussion on the findings of the report are welcomed. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Administrator Fernandez. Those are perfect remarks for kicking off this this event. I know you have to run, but again, want to thank you for that great framing and for your support of this work. And Charlie, I'm sure you agree too. I mean, I really appreciated the way that the administrator contextualized this work in things, real world things that are happening now. It's, it's been said, but I think it's important for folks to understand this isn't work in the abstract, right? I mean, the Eno team worked with folks on the ground in places to try to figure out what was happening in places where they were, what lessons they had learned. As the administrator pointed out, it's a big country, right? And so things look different in Minneapolis than they do in New York, than they do in Austin and Seattle. But those best practices, we have found here is something that there is just so much demand for that right now, especially given all the challenges of the pandemic. What are they doing in this place? How do I learn from that? How do I take it and tailor it? And a lot of the work that we do here at Eno, not just the policy work, but the classes and the courses, is all around that kind of framing. And if you agree that you heard from that from the administrator as well.
Yeah, no question. It was really gratifying, and it's great to have the administrator there who has that real world pragmatic experience, as I mentioned, but also we do learn from each other, and there are different practices, different governing kind of organizations, and really every project is different. So that's what it's custom. This isn't a cookie cutter kind of process. So having this collaborative sharing is where we actually will, for our next projects, because there's always another one, do it much better.
Indeed. And that is something we did find when we got into this work. Folks said, well, what's the one issue, right? Everybody kind of has that in their own head. But with Paul Lewis and his team, as they went through all this work, your point is very well taken. You've seen one project, There are similarities, there are lessons, there's advice and all that, but in each case, there is a lot of uniqueness that overarches this stuff. So, Charlie, thank you so much for these kickoff remarks and for chairing this panel. As was noted, we have 4 days of programming ahead. Each day is going to start at 12 p.m. Washington time. It's going to end at 3. We're not going to have you sit in front of your computers all day long, but try to put it in these little chunks. We are now going to take a short break because we do have a big session right after this. So we're going to take a break for about 10, 15 minutes. We're going to restart at 12:45 Washington time. And the Eno team will present findings from the initiative before being joined by Vox's Jerusalem Dempsis for a conversation about our recommendations. Following that panel, we will open up those networking rooms. I really would encourage you to take advantage of those. It is pretty cool. It is a way that we could try to be connected. Charlie, as you were saying, we did have our meeting so many months ago, but it is one way that we're trying to stay connected to everybody. And again, that best practices learning and those sharing peer-to-peer stuff is really important. You can attend each of these sessions by navigating to the agenda tab on the side of your Socio screen. And as you'll see on the agenda, there's going to be concurrent sessions throughout the symposium. You can save, bookmark whichever session you want to attend. The recordings for all the sessions will be available, so you can go back and watch sessions that you weren't able to attend. So with that, again, thank you so much to Administrator Fernandez for the kickoff remarks. Charlie, again, thank you so much to you.
Thank you, Rob. Well done, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 days.
So am I. And we'll come back in about 15 minutes, everybody. Thanks very much.